This NHL season has been as predictable as a puck rolling on its edge. No one knows where it's going, but that just means there's time for your favorite team to figure things out, and games left for you to get in the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. It's super easy for first timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. And if you are new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. New customers only. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. NHL and NHL team marks are the property of the NHL and its teams. Welcome back. The last time we spoke, we had done a preview strictly on YouTube where you guys were able to see our pregame thoughts on the Canada-US game that took part on Saturday, February 15th, if I'm not mistaken, where unfortunately Canada fell 3-1 in that game to the US in a game, Liam, that was one for the ages, if that's kind of putting it lightly. I mean, I think the game overall was obviously highly anticipated. I think that first period was very, very rowdy. Second and third period were a little bit, they didn't live up to the hype necessarily, at least in my opinion. But nonetheless, the game as a whole was definitely interesting to watch, interesting to be a part of, and happy to kind of be a hockey fan at this point in time because I feel like people are starting to, cling on to the fact that hockey is a cool sport to follow and to watch, and it's growing in popularity. So that's awesome. But nonetheless, 3-1 for the US on Saturday night. Didn't go the way that Canada wanted it to. Canada played right into the US's scheme, into their game plan, fell right into that trap, and unfortunately fell. What are your initial thoughts on that game, Liam? Unfortunately, I know that you had predicted that Canada would take that game. I had the US winning, I think 3-2. You had Canada winning 5-4 or 4-3.
Yeah. I mean, it was an insane experience and just like you said, something crazy to be a part of. Just the atmosphere was insane, and just like opening the game with 3 fights was ridiculous. And now you're seeing all these famous people comparing what the NHL has done with this tournament compared to the other major sports' all-star games, and the environment just doesn't compare, and what the NHL has brought hasn't compared. I don't know how they're going to go back to the all-star game after this because this is just absolutely unreal. But like I said, it was an amazing first period. The second was a bit slower, but it picked up a little bit in the third. There were some big hits, and obviously the US scored, so Canada was fighting, but overall it was definitely a once in a lifetime experience, and hopefully on Thursday we get a similar, if not even better game.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is that it doesn't necessarily have to be a once in a lifetime when they get to go back at it in Boston on Thursday night at 8 p.m., which is going to be a doozy to say the least. I think Canada's obviously seeking revenge. I think that this is very personal for the players. They're playing for the pride of their country, and I think that this game is a huge testament to what both of these countries have kind of built over the years in terms of being able to put this team on paper and actually participate in the Four Nations. So really exciting there. Any other quick thoughts on the game? Like I thought overall, Canada kind of came out flying. The fights definitely stoked up, or definitely got both benches going. But I think ultimately you could tell that in the first few minutes of that game, it kind of benefited the US despite Canada going on the power play early. Obviously, Canada gets the goal. Connor McDavid down the right side, right through the neutral zone on a nice pass from Doughty. Goes backhand right over Hellebuck's shoulder, which was an unbelievable goal. But from there on out, I feel like their chances were relatively limited. I feel like they had a lot of puck possession. but I feel like they didn't do too much with it. I really hope that that changes on Thursday night. And do you think that John Cooper and his coaching staff will be able to kind of change the way that they play and maybe change their approach and outlook on their second tilt with US?
Yeah, I think they're gonna have to adjust definitely to win, but now they kind of know what the U.S. is trying to do when McDavid or McKinnon's on the ice because it was just complete shutdown, and it just felt like the big boys for Canada couldn't do anything. They couldn't get into the offensive zone and create good opportunities. And I don't know from your perspective, but from my perspective, the guys who stood out most were guys like Hagel, Bennett, and Harley, who obviously aren't the guys who were brought in to score goals, but just from the perspective of me watching, they were the guys that looked like they were putting in the most work and generating the most offense as well as generating the most physicality. They were just standing out the most to me.
No, 100%. And I think that we'll kind of fast forward now to yesterday, Monday, the 17th, when Canada had their chance, or we're talking about the fact that they're playing the US in the final, but let's talk about how they got there. They beat Finland by a score of 5-3. And with only a few minutes left in the third, they were up 4-0. They kind of collapsed with a few minutes left, net empty on Finland's side, scored a few goals, but Crosby ices the game with an empty net goal. Um, this is kind of a difference from that game against the US, where you were kind of talking about the Hagels, the Sorellis, even the Sam Bennett's kind of coming to play and playing a role in that game. This was one where you had a goal from McDavid, two goals from McKinnon, a goal from Braden Point, and a goal from Sidney Crosby. So the stars really came to play in this one. Maybe it's a testament to the fact that Finland isn't as strong defensively, and maybe they're not as good in that man-on-man situation where it allowed Canada Stars players to exploit that. But what are your thoughts on this game? And do you think that this can potentially translate, I guess, into Thursday? But more specifically about this game, like what were your original thoughts?
I think the lines they came out with were absolutely amazing. I think bringing Braden Point up to McDavid's line was exactly what McDavid needed because clearly the combinations of him, yeah, McDavid, Reinhart, Stone was in there a bit, Marner, it just wasn't working. And I don't know if that's because they like the guys on his wings just couldn't keep up with McDavid, but it always seemed like McDavid was entering the zone and nobody was with him. So bringing on a guy like Braden Point on that line started to generate offense, and as a testament, he ended up scoring, and McDavid did as well. But it just seemed like the offensive zone opened up way more once Braden Point was always jumping in the play with McDavid. So I'll give Cooper a thumbs up on that one, and also the fact that he was always trying to line match just off the start of the game. He started his bottom six against Finland's better lines, which then when McDavid, McKinnon, and Crosby had to come on, Finland had to double shift their top guys. So obviously you're getting a fresh leg line, I guess you could say, and Canada's top players against Finland's top guys who have already played a shift. So Cooper was just more strategic, I found, than he was against the U.S. And obviously it paid off as they scored three goals pretty quickly and then a fourth in the second, I believe. But I mean, like you said, it was a bit scary towards the end, but um, I never had any doubt. I think the game was pretty much over. And when it's 4-0 late in the third, obviously guys are gonna, maybe take a step down and take their foot off the pedal. But I don't think we're gonna see that against the U.S. if Canada goes up early. This is, a way more important game.
Let's backtrack back to when we talked about the game preview, Canada US for Saturday's game. We had mentioned that Binnington was the starter. He comes out of that game letting in two goals, the third one being an empty net. Then he gets to start again against Finland, lets in three late, but overall had a good game. Despite looking a bit shaky, he's been good from a numbers perspective. Um, the one thing that I wanted to note is that now, right, you're 3 games in. There's no chance that that it's anyone but Binnington on Thursday night against the U.S. He's played 3 games. They're not throwing in Aiden Hill. They're not throwing in Sam Montembeau. But over the last 2 games, have you been impressed? Have you kind of just are you status quo with the way that Binnington's played? And do you think not that there's any other option, but do you think he's the man going into Thursday night?
I mean, he has to be, right. Like, play the last 3 games. You're not going to switch now. But I feel like Bennington hasn't necessarily gotten better throughout the tournament, but he also hasn't gotten worse. And although there is a lot of talk about him not being the guy in the crease, he's made the saves when he needs to, but he also does let in a few weak ones. You just got to hope that he keeps the puck out of the net on Thursday. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think they run it back with Binnington 100%?
Yeah, I think he's realistically going. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The one thing that I was going to say about Binnington is that despite looking back at the game against the US and saying, well, Gensel's goal took a lot of wind out of Canada's sails, especially when they were up 1-0. The Larkin goal, a nice shot, but still from range that probably should be saved. But the one thing I will say is that despite letting in those two goals that we could say are not great goals, Canada's not winning a game with one goal.
Yeah,
So even if we want to sit here and give Binnington a hard time, which I've been doing, and I'll admit to that, that game against the US, I'm not going to chalk up to his fault because you can't win a game with one goal, especially against a US team that is so strong and going to score 2, 3, 4 goals against you. So in that case, I don't. And again, against Finland yesterday, I mean, they win the game, they come out victorious, 3 goals late, really kind of just a very small percentage of that game as a whole. And I think against the US, he kind of knows what he's getting himself into. And I don't think that there's any doubt that he goes. And I don't think there's any doubt that he lacks any confidence going into that game. So we'll see.
100%. I think we should take a look at some of the lines now, see some of the potential changes, who's coming in, who's coming out. A lot of talk about potentially getting the two best defensemen in the league in this game, with Cale Makar looking like he's ready to go again, and then Quinn Hughes might be coming in. There's a lot of factors that will go into this, but Charlie McAvoy is officially out after getting an infection treated. I don't know how that happened, but um, Trocheck on the U.S. as well. So we'll see what happens with Quinn Hughes. But taking a look at Team Canada's lines, I'm sure they're going to stick to what they had last game, I'd assume. But Braden Point stays on the top line with McDavid and Mark Stone, Crosby, McKinnon, Reinhart, Hagel, Shirelli, Marner, who I thought also had a really good game overall. Obviously, didn't bring much offensively, but overall played a solid game. And then Marshawn Bennett Konechny finally getting more minutes, which I think was very much deserved and is needed for guys like that who have a very big impact on the game. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think, like you mentioned before, I think Cooper found those line combinations. I was really happy to see Konechny in the lineup, who I feel like is one of those players that we talked in the preview that brings kind of that combination of grit and skill, especially in that bottom six role on this Canada team. I think if there's one guy that I've been disappointed with, and this is not me just harping on a Leafs player, but I think Mitch Marner, for what he brings on a night in, night out basis in the NHL. 1 goal so far in this tournament. Obviously, the OT winner in the first game against Sweden, but I would like to see a little bit more out of him. I know he's never been a huge play driver, but he is the guy that's really creating a lot of offense with his mind and his passing ability. So I really would like to see a little bit more of that. But nonetheless, I understand that it is realistically one of those games where kind of the one bounce changes the outcome of a game, especially against the US. And I'm not going to sit here and chalk up his game to just points, because we could talk about guys that have been underproducing all tournament, especially not only on Canada, right? So I'll give him a bit of a slack there. But looking at the decor, nice to have Cale Makar back against that game. Against Finland, creates a lot of offense. So
Yeah.
smart, best defenseman in the league. There's no doubt about that, and you can really tell, especially when he's playing alongside his partner in Devon Taves, his regular NHL partner with Colorado. But other than that, I was really, I've been I wouldn't say impressed, but I've liked Morrissey's game. I think Sanheim's played really, really well. I liked Harley's game a lot against the U.S. I thought that he fit in really well in Makar's spot there. Parayko and Doughty, a little slow for the speed, but don't look completely out of place. So Decor has been doing its job to date, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, Canada lost basically half their decor um, going into the game versus the U.S. Obviously, you lose Petrangelo, who doesn't end up coming to the tournament, who would play a huge role against guys like the Kachuk brothers. You have no Shea Theodore, and then you have no Cale Makar. So three guys in your top four are not playing in that game. It's good that Cale Makar is going to be back against the U.S., but it's it definitely puts it into the perspective that maybe Canada does come out with a win there if, three of their top four guys are playing in that game. So it's going to be very exciting to see Cale Makar back. That's all I got to say.
Switching over to the U.S. side now, I know you mentioned the McAvoy injury. You mentioned the potential for Quinn Hughes, which is, and I don't know if you said this, but contingent on an injury to another player in that lineup because they already slotted in Sanderson, right? But if one of those guys were to get injured in practice or whatever it may be, then Quinn Hughes would be available, which is a very interesting little nuance there. So here are the lines for the U.S. for Thursday. They weren't available on Daily Faceoff or Left Wing Lock, but these are most likely what they're going to look like. Brady Tkachuk will be healthy. Matthew Tkachuk will be healthy. So you get that Brady Tkachuk, Matthew Tkachuk, Eichel line back together. Gensel, Matthews, Jack Hughes, JT Miller, Dylan Larkin, Matt Boldy, Brock Nelson, Vincent Trocheck, Kyle Connor. Quinn Hughes is there in that spot, but realistically, he probably won't play. But nonetheless, you have Werenski, Slavin, Faber, Hannafin, Fox, and probably Jake Sanderson. So this lineup is scary. It is the same one that Canada saw last on Saturday. I mean, I like obviously, like you mentioned, Matthews didn't play against Sweden last night. Neither did Brady Tkachuk left. Matthew Tkachuk didn't play, but definitely a scary lineup. They're good at all levels. So with Connor Hellebuck and Nets, I don't really have many comments on that. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously a very deep lineup, and we've talked about that a lot. I think the way Canada might be able to expose them is getting good line matchups versus that fourth line. I don't think Nelson and Trocheck necessarily are their best players, obviously, but you got to figure out ways to score, and obviously that's not going to be against the Tkachuk Eichel Tkachuk line. And Gensel, Matthews, and Jack Hughes have been absolutely unbelievable. So you got to remain physical, and you got to take advantage of these line matches because it's going to be very difficult. Yeah, I can't believe I'm saying that with McKinnon, McDavid, and Crosby on the ice, but Makar needs to be involved, and obviously Binnington needs to buy in and make those big saves. But honestly, last game was a good idea to see what or expect what we'll see. And if Bennington's able to keep the U.S. to 2 goals, I'd say that's pretty successful.
I was also going to say, based on the line matches that you were talking about, I know that that line isn't intact anymore, but I was really, really, really impressed with the way that John Cooper had used Hagel, Sorelli, and Point as a line to match up against the Kachuk brothers and Jack Eichel. I feel like they really didn't create any offense in that game. Talking about the US's line in that case, I mean, I feel like they kept them off the score sheet. They kind of kept them out of the high danger chances and keeping those guys from creating chances. And I feel like I know that that line is not intact as of today, as of the line rushes that we see right now. But I do think that, like you mentioned, it's going to be really, really important to see how John Cooper kind of takes advantage of kind of the mix and matching that he does throughout the game. But I'm interesting to see how this game goes in Boston. Like the truth is, Liam, is that I was heavily convinced that being in Montreal for Canada, that was going to play a huge factor into that game. And if I were to pick a side, I know I picked the U.S., but just based off atmosphere and environment, I would have taken Canada. I would have taken Canada purely based off the fact that that place was absolutely buzzing. And now I'm a little bit scared, and I know it clearly doesn't mean anything, but I'm scared to see. Like I was watching last night, the U.S. Sweden game where obviously the U.S. lost, but during that American national anthem, like I'm just scared that that riles the U.S. up a little bit too much, and they gain a lot of momentum quick because I don't know how that's going to go in TD Garden there.
Yeah, I mean, you can think of it both ways. Maybe it puts a little less pressure on them because they're not in front of their home fans, but I, regardless, I think there's going to be a lot of Canadian fans and there's going to be a lot of Canadians in general who make the trip over to Boston to support the team because this is one of the biggest games in the last like decade and a bit. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of Canadians there. I just
How?
think it's yeah, go ahead.
No, no, nothing. Just finish your thought there.
No, I was just gonna say like Canada just needs to add on to what I said before. Like they got to be successful on their power play, and the fact is Matthews hasn't scored a goal yet this tournament, and he's their most lethal goal
Has
scorer.
Jack Hughes?
I don't think Hughes has either, but
Crazy.
I mean it's crazy that Matthews hasn't scored a goal,
Yeah.
even though he's only played 2 games. But the fact is there's a lot of things Canada needs to do in order to win this game, and hopefully their hands aren't too full with all these, superlatives or whatever you call it.
Yeah. I was gonna say also like how funny would because I was thinking about it like how mad would Gary Bettman be if this didn't result in a Canada US final? Like you
Yeah.
gotta think like obviously it's not rigged or anything, but like you just gotta think that like from the get go, if this wasn't Canada US, like they're leaving a lot of money on the table. Like you just a
For
lot of
sure.
viewers,
For
a
sure.
lot of engagement, and like I was just thinking about that how it'd be funny. Like how many people would really tune into like a US like people would, but how many non diehard fans are tuning into US Finland, for example, you know? Like
I
people from
mean,
Finland,
yeah.
from US, and then
We
I
talked
guess
about it last episode, but I think the answer to how many people ended up watching was like 11 million or something.
okay. I saw on
So,
TNT specifically was like 4.5. So like
yeah,
that was like triple what we saw on for the game against what was it?
Canada,
US.
oh,
Oh no,
US Sweden or
no,
US Finland.
Finland, Sweden. Finland, Sweden.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't Canada, US in the finals, probably like half of North America isn't tuning in, especially if it's the US, then I'm sure they're getting less viewage as well. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad it's Canada US, and it was literally the matter of one goal. If Sweden won that game against Canada or won that game against Finland in overtime, it would have been Sweden, but can't look back now.
Last thought I was gonna say is that I wonder if there was a way to format this tournament, if there was anything they could have done differently to format this tournament in a way that the Sweden US game last night would have meant something, you know? Because like I find it really interesting that not that it really matters, and at the end of the day, it can't be perfect, but I wonder if there was a way to like schedule those games, and you really couldn't pass up Canada US on a Saturday night at the Bell
Mm.
Center. But I just wonder if there was a way to structure it so that it kind of came down to it, you know? And
Maybe
but
they could have put the Sweden US game first at 1 and then put the Canada Finland game at 8 because if Canada or Finland won in regulation, no matter
right,
what happened in that Sweden game,
they would have
they they would have
moved
moved
on.
on. So
Right. Yeah,
maybe that's the
that
solution.
probably would have made a little bit more sense. Like, but anyway, again, you can't like forecast too far
Yeah.
into the future. But anyway, I'm looking forward to this one, Liam. I know you are. I know pretty much everyone is, and I think we're Tuesday today, so it'll probably be posted by tomorrow on Wednesday. So the day before the game actually goes, we won't come back. So we're a little bit in advance. But knowing what we know now, I want to get a prediction from you. I want to get your player of the game, but I also want to get your final MVP vote because at the beginning of the tournament, if I'm not mistaken, you had put Nathan McKinnon,
Yeah.
correct? And that was with Canada winning it all. I
Yeah.
think I had US winning it all, and I don't
I think you
know.
said Hellebuck.
Okay, I think I went Hellebuck. I don't know. Okay, right. I think I said Gensel would lead the tournament in points, which is like
Yeah, it's
weirdly
almost
hitting
accurate.
right now, but or like close. But
Mm.
nonetheless, yeah. So I want to hear if you change your opinion on MVP. I want to hear your player of the game and your winner for this game.
I'll start off the winner. I'm sticking to Canada. I think they get their revenge on the US. History repeats itself. They did it in 2010. US beat them in the round robin, and Canada got advantage of them in the final. So I'm sticking to it. Canada gets the win. Um, my player of the game, I mean, I think whoever has the best game is gonna win MVP. If it's between like, because obviously you got to think it's either Crosby, McDavid, McKinnon, McCarr, and whoever has the bigger game is going to win MVP. I'm going to say McDavid has a game and then ends up taking MVP as well.
Okay, so you switch there from McKinnon to McDavid, but Canada stays winning. You know what? I have to move over. Like I have to. Like I had US winning
Yeah.
the tournament, but the truth is that based off the fact that that Canada lost on Saturday night, it really changes things for me. Like I just feel it's like a revenge game. It's a revenge
Yeah.
game. You go into their
Exactly.
barn and you absolutely take it right from them. And I say Canada wins that game. I think Crosby wins. I think Crosby wins player of the game, but I don't know if it's enough. You know what? No. What am I? Who am I kidding? It is enough for him. You're right because the truth is it's such a short tournament that every game matters, and Crosby's played well enough to date to that if he wins player
Hmm.
of the game of that game, he's winning MVP of the
He's leading
tournament.
the
So
tournament in points right now with
there
Zach
you go.
Werenski out of everyone. So,
That's crazy. But yeah,
yeah,
I'll take Crosby MVP with player of the game and Canada to win that one.
very nice.
But we'll leave it at that. That was fun. Definitely going to be interesting. And like we said last time, we definitely will come back with a review of that game And when we come back with a review of that game, the funny part is, Liam, and I don't want to go any longer, but it's just going to feel really weird to go back to Montreal Canadiens hockey. It doesn't even feel like it exists to me anymore for
Yeah,
some reason.
it really doesn't. And then just 2 weeks after Thursday, it's the trade deadline, so there's gonna be a lot of
But
roster
like,
changes coming.
can we
And
really go back to watching Christian Dvorak after cheering on like Crosby and Crosby and McKinnon?
you know what I said? I said the next time I'm at the Bell Center, I'm gonna have to be seeing Christian Dvorak on power play too, and it's not gonna
Easy.
be McDavid, McKinnon, McCarr, all
Crazy.
those guys.
Anyway, whatever. We'll talk Habs when the time comes. But right now, it's cheering on the nation, Canada, in Boston Thursday night. Buckle in. But we'll speak to you guys next time and let us know what you guys think. Take care.